The air was biting cold and sharp like a knife cutting through the thick layers of clothing worn by the Marine as he trudged through the snow-covered landscape. His breath came out in visible clouds as he scanned the horizon, his senses alert to every sound, every movement around him. The frost clung to the trees like a heavy cloak, and the silence was broken only by the crunch of his boots against the frozen ground. This was no ordinary patrol for him, but a routine mission meant to keep the area secure, and yet something about this morning felt different. The Marine, whose name was Jack, had been in the service for several years. He was trained to expect the unexpected, but even with all his training, he could not prepare himself for what he was about to encounter. Jack's mind drifted briefly to his family back home, the warmth of his mother's kitchen, the sound of his younger sister laughing, all memories that gave him strength on lonely nights in foreign lands. But now here, he was miles from everything he loved in the cold wilderness alone, with only his thoughts and the steady rhythm of his steps. Suddenly a faint sound broke the monotony. A whimper so soft and fragile it might have been imagined, if not for the unmistakable urgency in it. Jack stopped dead in his tracks, his head tilted slightly, trying to locate the source. The whimper came again this time, more insistent. A sound filled with fear and desperation. It was coming from a shallow ditch hidden partially by snow and frozen branches. Without hesitation, Jack veered off the path following the sound. The snow crunched louder beneath his boots as he reached the edge of the ditch and looked down. His eyes widened as he saw two tiny shapes curled up together, their fur matted with ice and dirt. They were puppies, German shepherds from their coloring and shape, but so small, so vulnerable in the harshness of the cold environment. Jack's heart clenched at the sight. Their bodies were trembling uncontrollably, their tiny chests rising and falling with ragged breaths. The freezing cold had clearly taken a toll on them. Jack knew that leaving them there meant certain death, but the area was remote, and help was miles away. His military training told him to think quickly, to act decisively. He carefully reached down, hands steady despite the cold, and gently scooped up the puppies, wrapping them inside his heavy jacket against his body for warmth. The puppies whined softly, nuzzling against him as if sensing that he was their only chance. But even as Jack took them in his arms, he felt a prickle at the back of his neck, a feeling of unease that something was watching him from the shadows. He scanned the tree line and saw nothing yet. The hairs on his arms stood on end. The wilderness was unpredictable and dangerous, and now he had two fragile lives depending on him in this unforgiving place. As Jack started moving back toward his vehicle, the whimpering of the puppies mixed with the rustling of leaves and the distant howl of a wolf. The tension in the air was palpable, and every step was filled with uncertainty. He wondered if he could make it in time, if the warmth inside his jacket was enough to save the little lives he carried, if only someone could have known the story that was unfolding in this silent, frozen moment, a story of survival hope, and an unbreakable bond beginning to form against all odds. Jack's mind raced with plans and worries, the cold biting deeper into his skin, the wind picking up speed, making it harder to see the trail ahead. Yet he pressed on, determined not to fail the helpless creatures entrusted to his care. The forest seemed endless, and time seemed to stretch and compress all at once as he fought against exhaustion and despair. But deep inside, a flicker of something stronger burned, a fierce determination to rescue these puppies, no matter what it took. And so, in the heart of a frozen wilderness, with only his courage and compassion as weapons, Marine began a journey that would change the lives of two tiny German shepherd puppies forever, and leave a mark on him that he could never forget. Jack hurried through the snow-blanketed forest, every step heavy with the weight of the two fragile puppies nestled against his chest, their soft bodies barely warmed under his thick jacket. But it was all he had for now. The wind howled around him, a relentless force that seemed to challenge his resolve to keep moving forward. His breath was ragged, from the cold and the exertion, but he refused to slow down, not with lives depending on him. The deeper into the forest he went, the more oppressive the silence became, broken only by the faint cries of the puppies and the crunch of his boots in the frozen snow. Each shadow seemed to shift and move like a living thing, reminding Jack that the wilderness was not his friend here. The memory of stories told by older Marines about dangers lurking in places like this flashed in his mind, but he pushed, the fear aside, focusing on the immediate task. Suddenly, through the trees, he spotted his vehicle parked near a small clearing. The sight brought a rush of relief and hope. He quickened his pace, determined to get the puppies inside the warmth of the engine and out of the freezing air. But then movement caught his eye. Something darting between the trees, too fast to make out clearly. His heart skipped a beat, wondering if it was an animal or something worse. He instinctively raised his hand toward his sidearm, ready for whatever might emerge. The shape disappeared as quickly as it came, leaving behind only the rustling of leaves. Jack exhaled deeply, trying to calm his racing heart. The forest had played tricks on him, or maybe it was just his imagination fueled by worry and cold. But he knew better than to take chances in a place like this. Still, the unknown lingered like a shadow, casting doubt over the fragile moment of hope he had found. Reaching his vehicle, Jack set the puppies down, gently onto the seat, their tiny bodies curling instinctively to preserve what little warmth they had left. The puppies looked up at him with eyes full of trust and exhaustion. A soft whimper escaped one of them, and Jack felt a pang of determination to do whatever it took to save these creatures who had already endured so much. Jack started the engine, and the warm air from the heater filled the cabin, bringing a welcome contrast to the biting cold outside. He carefully wrapped the puppies in, a blanket from the back seat, cocooning them in warmth as best he could. The puppies snuggled closer, closing their eyes for a brief moment of peace, but Jack knew their fight was far from over. As he drove away from the forest, the terrain became rougher and the road less defined. The vehicle bounced and jostled with every turn, but Jack kept his focus on the road ahead. Each mile brought him closer to the safety and medical help the puppies desperately needed. Yet the feeling of unease he had felt in the woods refused to fade. Suddenly, a shadow passed over the windshield, a dark shape moving quickly just beyond the headlights. Jack slammed on the brakes, heart pounding as he peered into the night, trying to make out what had crossed his path. He saw a figure standing silently at the edge of the road, motionless and watching. The figure was too still to be an animal, and the shape seemed vaguely familiar. Jack grabbed his flashlight and stepped out into the cold night air, the puppies resting safely inside, but his mind racing with questions. Who was watching him here? Why now? What did this mean for the rescue he was so desperate to complete? The silence stretched thick and heavy around him as he shone the light toward the figure. But it was gone as suddenly as it had appeared, back in the vehicle. Jack locked the doors and tried to steady his nerves. The wilderness held secrets and dangers that no training could fully prepare him for, and yet his resolve hardened like steel, knowing that giving up was not an option. The puppies needed him, and he would face whatever shadows lurked in the night to bring them to safety. Hours passed with Jack driving through the darkness, the puppies gradually growing stronger from the warmth and gentle care he gave them. But the questions about the mysterious watcher lingered in his mind like an unspoken warning. The forest had not finished with him yet, and whatever came next would test more than just his courage. As dawn began to break, the first light revealed a small outpost ahead, a beacon of hope in the wilderness. Jack's heart lifted knowing that help was near. But even as he prepared to stop and seek aid, the feeling of being watched crept back, sending a chill deeper than the cold itself. The journey was far from over, and the story of the two German shepherd puppies and the Marine who saved them was only just beginning. Jack pulled into the small outpost, his eyes scanning every inch of the place for signs of life or help. The cold morning light revealed a cluster of buildings weathered by time and elements, but still standing sturdy enough to offer refuge. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke and something faintly metallic, but the warmth of human presence was unmistakable. Jack felt a flicker of hope stir within him as he gently carried the two puppies out of the vehicle. Their fragile bodies seemed lighter now, warmed by the heater but still weak and trembling. He approached the main building cautiously. The door creaked open under his hand, and inside he found a few people already gathered, some in uniform, others in civilian clothes. Their faces turned toward him with a mixture of surprise, curiosity, and concern. When Jack explained the situation, about finding the puppies barely alive in the freezing cold, the room filled with whispers and hurried movement. One of the men stepped forward, a veterinarian by the look of him, and immediately took the puppies into his care. Jack watched anxiously as the vet examined their tiny bodies, checking for signs of hypothermia, dehydration, and injury. The puppies whimpered softly but held on, fighting with a strength that seemed almost impossible given their condition. Jack's heart pounded with a mix of relief and dread, hoping that the worst was behind them, but knowing deep down the battle was far from over. As the vet worked, Jack found himself drawn into conversations with the others at the outpost. Stories of rescues, survival, and unexpected bonds began to unfold around him. Each person seemed touched by the plight of the puppies, and by Jack's determination to save them, the atmosphere was heavy with the unspoken understanding that sometimes the smallest lives carried the greatest weight. Hours passed slowly, and the vet finally stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. Looked at Jack with a seriousness that sent a chill through the Marine's bones. The puppies were stable but fragile. They needed constant care and time to heal, but the odds were now in their favor. Jack nodded silently, knowing the journey was not just about getting them warm, but about giving them a chance to live and thrive. Just as Jack was about to relax, a sudden noise from outside made everyone freeze. The sharp crack of a gunshot echoed through the crisp morning air, followed by shouts and scrambling footsteps. Jack instinctively grabbed his rifle and rushed toward the sound, his mind racing through every possible scenario. The outpost was supposed to be safe, but now it felt like a trap closing in. He reached the entrance just in time to see shadows darting between the trees. The mysterious figure from the night before emerged, leading a small group of men armed and hostile, their eyes cold and hard like predators looking for prey. Jack's training kicked in, his body moving with precision and speed as he positioned himself to defend the outpost and the helpless puppies inside. The tension exploded into chaos as gunfire erupted and people shouted orders. Jack ducked behind a wall, returning fire, his mind focused on protecting those who could not protect themselves. The puppies whined in fear but were safely inside the building where the vet and others worked to shield them from harm. The firefight raged on the frozen ground, stained with the cold blood of a battle. No one expected, but all were ready to fight in the midst of the chaos. Jack caught a glimpse of the leader of the attackers, his face familiar now, unmistakable and terrifying. The man was someone from Jack's past, a ghost he thought he had left behind years ago. But here he was, bringing destruction and danger into what should have been a place of sanctuary. The revelation hit Jack like a thunderclap, threatening to unravel everything he fought for. With renewed fury, Jack pressed forward, pushing back against the attackers, using every skill he had learned in the Marines. The battle seemed endless, each moment stretching into an eternity, but the determination to protect the puppies and the outpost burned brighter than the cold around them. Then suddenly, as if by some silent signal, the attackers began to retreat, vanishing into the forest as quickly as they had come, leaving behind questions, wounds, and a heavy silence. Jack lowered his rifle, breathing hard, his body aching, but his spirit unbroken. The outpost was secure for now and the puppies safe, but the danger was far from over. The leader's appearance had opened old wounds and raised new fears. What had brought this enemy here? What did they want with the puppies or with Jack himself? The answers were elusive, but one thing was clear. The journey was only beginning. Back inside the warmth of the outpost, Jack sat beside the small cages where the puppies rested, wrapped in soft blankets. Their tiny bodies still fragile, but their eyes bright and alert for the first time since he found them. One of the puppies looked up and gave a weak wag of its tail, a simple gesture, but one that filled Jack with a profound sense of hope and connection as he reached out to gently stroke their fur. Jack knew that these puppies were more than just animals. They were symbols of resilience, courage, and the unexpected bonds that can form in the darkest moments. The story that had begun with a desperate rescue was now unfolding into something much larger and deeper, a testament to the strength found in kindness and the power of hope. The questions about the attacker and the past would have to wait for another day. Now was the time to heal, to protect, and to prepare for whatever lay ahead. Because in this frozen wilderness where danger lurked and hope flickered like a fragile flame, Jack and the puppies had found something worth fighting for. Something that no enemy could take away, and so the Marine and the two German shepherd puppies rested together, their futures uncertain, but their bond unbreakable, a silent promise in the cold light of dawn that no matter what came next, they would face it together. The morning sun crept slowly over the horizon, casting long shadows. Across the snow-covered landscape outside the outpost, Jack sat quietly beside the small cages where the two German shepherd puppies rested, their chests rising and falling with steady breaths. The tension that had gripped the night before lingered, in the air like a heavy fog, but now it was tempered by a fragile sense of peace. Jack's mind wandered back to the moment he first found the puppies in the frozen ditch. How helpless and vulnerable they had been, and yet somehow still fighting for life. The journey had been long and dangerous, filled with moments of fear and uncertainty, but through it all a bond had grown stronger between him and these small creatures that depended on him completely. As the puppies stirred, Jack reached out, gently tracing the soft fur on one of their heads. The smallest puppy looked up, its eyes meeting his with a depth of gratitude and something almost like recognition. Jack felt a lump rise in his throat, because in that moment he understood that their connection went beyond simple survival. It was something deeper, something that could not be broken by the cold or the dangers that lurked outside. But even as hope blossomed, Jack knew the past was not done with him. The leader of the attackers had left questions unanswered and a shadow hanging over the outpost. Jack's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching, and he turned to see the vet walking toward him, a look of concern etched across his face. The vet spoke, softly explaining that while the puppies were improving, there were signs that their ordeal had taken a toll that might not be visible at first glance. Jack listened intently, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing heavier on his shoulders. This was more than a rescue now. It was a mission to give these puppies a future, no matter the cost. Outside, the outpost, the cold wind picked up scattering flakes of snow across the ground. Jack stepped outside, pulling his jacket tighter around him, and looked toward the forest line where the attackers had disappeared. The memories of the firefight lingered sharp and raw, and the knowledge that the danger was still out there gnawed at him. But he refused to let fear dictate his actions, because these puppies needed strength and protection, and he would give them everything he had. Back inside the outpost, a plan began to form in Jack's mind. The puppies needed more than just warmth and shelter. They needed care, safety, and eventually a home. A call for reinforcements, medical supplies, and transport to a safer place had to be made, but the communications equipment at the outpost was damaged from the attack, and time was running out. Jack set to work repairing the radio, his hands moving. Methodically, despite the cold and fatigue, the puppies watched him with wide eyes as if understanding the urgency of the moment. Every second counted, and failure was not an option. The outpost had become a battleground and a sanctuary, and Jack was determined to keep it that way. As he worked, the door suddenly creaked open and one of the locals entered cautiously, bringing news of increased activity in the forest. A new threat was approaching, one that could endanger not just the outpost, but the fragile lives within it. Jack felt a surge of adrenaline replacing exhaustion. The battle was not over, and the fight to protect these puppies was about to become even more dangerous. Jack gathered the small group of defenders and shared the news, their faces set with resolve and determination. Each person understood that what they were protecting was more than just a few lives. It was a symbol of hope in a world that often seemed dark and unforgiving. The bond between the Marine and the puppies had inspired something bigger than any of them expected. The hours that followed were tense, with every shadow scrutinized, every sound investigated. The cold seemed to press in from all sides, but the spirit inside the outpost burned bright. The puppies remained calm, their presence a source of comfort and strength for everyone around them. Jack found himself drawing courage from their resilience, knowing that they had already survived what many would not. Night fell once again, and the outpost settled into an uneasy silence, broken only by the occasional whisper of wind and the soft breathing of the puppies. Jack sat by their side, watching over them, his thoughts drifting to the future. What would become of these small lives he had fought so hard to save? Could they truly find a home where they would be safe and loved? Suddenly, a faint noise from outside pulled Jack to his feet, alert and ready. His hand instinctively moved to his rifle as he crept toward the window, peering into the darkness. The outline of a figure appeared momentarily in the distance, then vanished, leaving behind a question that burned in Jack's mind. Was it friend or foe? And what did it want with the puppies, or with him? The night stretched on, with no clear answers, only the steady rhythm of hope and fear intertwined. The story of the Marine and the two German shepherd puppies was far from over. It was a tale of survival courage and an unbreakable bond that had already defied